Will the $1.7 trillion Omnibus bill be the thing to take down the United States government? Well, the U.S. government is feverishly working away trying to pass this humongous $1.7 trillion spending bill called the Omnibus bill. That's going to push the United States much further into deficit spending and debt, and trying to cram it through days right before Christmas. But this Omnibus bill is so big that none of your elected leaders who are supposed to be looking out for your best interests even have time to read it. Even if they wanted to, it's physically impossible, and yet they're pushing it through. As Chuck Schumer said, getting it done for the American people is the most important thing that matters. Really? Is it really for the people? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break all this down as best as I can for you. We're gonna look at why governments use spending bills like this at the last minute to cram things through. We're gonna break it open, and I'm gonna explain some of the highest ticket items and the most outrageous items. You literally won't believe these things. I'm gonna show you how and where the military-industrial complex lies inside of this, and most importantly, what this means for the economy, the highly anticipated Fed pivot, and your retirement accounts. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos to change the way you think about money. This isn't just reporting the news. I'm trying to help you understand it so you know how to apply this to your own life. And I know if you're watching this when I put it out, we're here at the end of the year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. And it's been a pretty rough year for the financial markets. As a matter of fact, one of the worst years on record when you look at the stocks and bonds together. But don't worry, we're navigating this correctly. We're navigating this together. There's massive hope and prosperity. I believe next year things start turning around. We're gonna make it. So let's dig into this so we can see what to expect, because I think this forces the hand of the government even more than it already was. All right, so first off, before we dig into this enormous spending bill, what this means and ultimately what the government does because of it, or I should say the Federal Reserve and the central banks, I want to introduce you to a concept first called legal plunder. Now this term was coined by Frederick Bastiat in a book called The Law. He wrote it in about 1850. It's a booklet. It's a book you can read in about an hour, and I highly recommend every single one of you just to order this off of Amazon. It's a couple bucks, I don't know, $5 or $7. You can read in about an hour, and you should, every one. But anyway, he introduced this term called legal plunder. And basically, it's wealth acquired without voluntary exchange. And so there's two ways to acquire wealth. There's cooperation and there's coercion. So cooperation is we trade, free and voluntary exchange. I want what you have, you want what I have, we exchange. The other way is coercion, which is I just take it from you and you don't want to give it to me voluntarily. All right, and this is also called la ruse, or it's fraud or trickery. So what he defined it as illegal plunder, which would be illegal, which would be typically, when you get robbed, your house gets robbed, thieves come in, steal things, that's illegal because it breaks laws. But what he called legal plunder is basically done by the state, the government, and it's the legal system. So they create laws that allows them to legally steal your private property. All right, it's protecting and taking others' property by force legally, right? So like taxes, for example, they take your money most of the times without your consent, and that's legal plunder. And the reason why I want to start with that is because it helps frame up what we're about to go into. All right, now let's talk about the subject at hand, this incredible omnibus bill. What the heck does that word even mean? Well, the Latin meaning is for all or for everyone. So it's for you, of course. It's for the American people. It's for your best interests. We're all in this together. It's for everyone. Well, I don't know if there's any money in there for me. I don't know if there's any money for you, but we're going to find out. All right, so it's a 1.7. I mean, these numbers are just astronomical. Just again, for reference, you remember in 2008, the entire global financial system melted down, and it took 700 billion to save it. 700 billion to save the global financial system. This is more than double that. $1.7 trillion of spending. The bill is so big, it's over 4,000 pages. And here's a picture of Rand Paul, good old Rand Paul, Ron Paul's son. Shout out to Ron Paul in the Fed. Rand Paul is doing his best to carry that on. And he printed the whole thing out so you could see the ridiculousness of this. And it's not just the ridiculousness of the bill, it's how it was presented. Let's hear it directly from him.
I brought with me the Omni, 4,155 pages. When was it produced? In the dead of the night, 1:30 in the morning when it was released. Now, people argue that it's conservatives' fault. You don't have the Christmas spirit. Somehow you're holding up government. Well, whose job is it to produce this? The people in charge of spending. The people in charge of both of the parties. When did they know that this would be necessary? Well, it's in the law, September 30th. You got 9 months, almost 10 months, to produce a plan, to have a spending plan. They weren't ready on September 30th, so they voted themselves 90 more days. They weren't ready last week either, so they voted themselves another week. And now we have it at 1:30 in the morning this morning.
All right, so there you have it, directly from Rand Paul, telling you how ridiculous, how insane it is that they push a bill like this through in the middle of the night. And not just the middle of the night, which is bad enough, 1:30 a.m., but days before Christmas, when everybody's already thinking about the end of the year. Of course, the American people, the public, we're not paying attention. We're tuned out. We're last-minute gift buying, whatever we're trying to do, trying to make some last-minute money to buy that gift. And they did it potentially on purpose. It was supposed to have been done in September. And then it was supposed to have been done, And it wasn't like they just found out about this. They're supposed to do it every single year. It's written in law. And so you have to ask yourself, then why? Why is it delayed? Why is it delayed right before Christmas? Why is it delayed? Why is it delivered at 1:30 a.m.? Now, the ridiculous of the 4,000 pages, we'll come back to that in a little bit. All right, now, if we want to break this down, I'm going to dive in this, I want to crack it open. So first of all, like I said, $1.7 trillion. Now, these spending bills, the legal plunder, is nothing new. As I said, Bastiat talked about it in 1850. We can see cartoons have been written about it. They used to call it the pork. So they'd write just excess spending in these bills. We call it pork. But what we know is out of the 1.7 trillion, about half, or a little bit more than half, 858 billion goes to the Pentagon. That's the U.S. military industrial complex. More on that in a minute. About half goes to the Pentagon for who knows what. And then 772, a little less than half billion, goes for what's called discretionary. So when you make money for your household, you receive your money and then you pay your bills that you have to pay, like your rent. If you don't pay your rent or your electricity, that's really bad, your car payment, right? And then you have discretionary. That's like, well, maybe I'll go out to dinner. Maybe I'll go see a movie. Maybe I'll buy myself this thing that I've always wanted. That's discretionary, meaning you don't have to. It's not urgent or necessary, but it's kind of nice. If I have extra money, I would do that. I would ask yourself the question, does the U.S. just have extra money? $31 trillion in debt, losing $1 trillion a year in deficit spending. Do we have almost $1 trillion to spend just discretionary? And let's dig into what that is. So where does it all go? So let's break that down a little bit. Now, first off, right off the bat, over half of it goes to the Pentagon. Now, that money goes to the Pentagon to fund the Pentagon, again, the military industrial complex, and we don't know where that money goes. And it's not just that we don't know where that money goes, they don't even know where the money goes. Now, that sounds insane, right? What do you mean they don't know where trillions of dollars goes? Well, let's hear it directly from Donald Rumsfeld back in 2001, and let's hear what he had to say.
Pentagon, the day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for...
All right, so there you have it, directly from the head of this military industrial complex, telling you back in 2001 that they just don't know where trillions of dollars went. They can't account for it. And the biggest threat to the nation is that. The biggest threat that the nation faced was this wasteful, unaccounted spending by the military-industrial complex. Now, coincidentally, the day after he told us that, the day after he said that we don't know where $2.3 trillion are, the very next day, the Trade Center got bombed. Very next day, all right? Planes flew into the World Trade Center, 9/11. So what happens when that happens? So we had been fighting this Cold War for a long time. The military-industrial complex continued to get bigger and bigger to fight this war, and then the Cold War was over. And so from about 1990 till 2001, about 10 years, there was kind of peace, and there was no enemy. And why do we need to keep building weapons and bombs and all these things if there's no enemy for about 10 years? So what if we could have an enemy that never, we couldn't identify. We never knew where they were. There was never an end. So like a war on terrorism, which started the very next day. The anniversary of September 11, 2001, the terrorist attacks in the World Trade Center, saw inexplicable events that happened the day before, and they're usually glossed over. So what happened the day before, Donald Rumsfeld, usually it's glossed over. Nobody talks about it. On September 10th, the day before, then Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld announced that a $2.3 trillion had gone missing at the Pentagon. He blamed the corrupt bureaucracy for these funds vanishing essentially into thin air. He says here, the scandal was conveniently lost in the shuffle only a day after it was made public. Now, of course, as soon as we went to war, then turn the money printers back on, give them as much money as we need. Who cares if they don't know where the $2.3 trillion are? Let's give it all to them. But it hasn't gotten better, of course. Why would it? It's only gotten worse. Now what we can see is that the Pentagon admits it can't account for $2 trillion again. Trillions. This is not small money. $2 trillion again. Of course, it just keeps going again and again. The Pentagon has never passed an audit. Never. Some senators want to change that. Yeah, good luck with that. We have this article right here that came out a month ago. Pentagon fails audit yet again. It could, maybe it could pass an audit in 2027? Are you kidding me? Well, unfortunately, I'm not kidding you. And so this is the state of the military-industrial complex. So who gets the $858 billion that goes to the Pentagon? Well, when they spend this money, where does it go? Where does it go? It goes to somebody. Somebody puts it in their pocket, right? Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, right? You're starting to get the picture. All right, let's keep going. So we don't know where the $858 billion to the Pentagon goes. They don't even know. It just goes away. Let's look at the rest. The rest, which is called the discretionary spending. So I could spend a lot of time breaking this down. I grabbed some of the most outrageous ones. We have $410 million for other countries' borders. So we have this. I have a couple of receipts for you. I'm not going to pull up every receipt because there's just too many. So we have $410 million for the border security for Jordan. Let's secure Jordan's borders. Let's secure Lebanon's, Egypt's, Tunisia's, Oman's borders. Let's secure all them. Let's spend $400 million to do that. But at the same time we're doing that, of course we know our borders aren't secure. Not only does it not give money to secure our own borders, it actually expressly prohibits funding from being used to improve U.S. border security. So we're spending money, $400 million, to secure these countries' borders, and then also creating laws that prohibit spending money to secure our own borders. Seems pretty crazy. So I bring up a couple of these because they're just so outrageous. I want you to see them. We'll skip through some of the other ones. Of course, $1.4 billion for membership into global multilateral organizations. World Economic Forum, UN, the NGOs, non-government organizations, the globalist leaders that are telling us what to do. Yeah, let's just keep giving them money. How about just $1.4 billion? Yeah, no big deal. We have $575 million for quote-unquote family planning, where population growth, quote, threatens biodiversity. So where population growth is going too fast, we're going to spend money to family plan or cull the herd. Put words in your own mouth. $524 million for DEI and, quote, structural racism, focused subdivisions. So now we want to change the way houses are organized for racism. $477,000 for anti-racist training from Equity Institute. $15 million for vaccine injuries. Again, this is all just discretionary spending. $3 million for LGBTQ museum. Okay. $200 million for Pakistan for Gender Equity Fund. Let's fund gender equity studies in Pakistan because discretionary money. Remember, discretionary is after you've paid your rent, your utility bill, your car payment. Discretionary is when you go out to dinner or buy yourself that gift you wanted. Because we have just so much money sloshing around, let's just go ahead and send $200 million to Pakistan, $286 million for Title X, which of course funds Planned Parenthood, which of course kills babies, $8.6 million for, quote, gender advisor programs for the Pentagon, because the $850 billion the Pentagon got wasn't enough. We've got to give them another $8.6 million. $750,000 for a trans group to, quote, inject LGBTQ discussion into elementary schools. Are you okay with that? You're a U.S. taxpayer. You want your tax dollars. As a matter of fact, deficit spending, not discretionary, deficit spending, your kids and grandkids will be paying for this, are putting money to inject LGBTQ discussion into elementary schools. And look, I don't care which sexual preference or gender you want to be. I don't care about that. But kids are kids. Our role is to protect kids' innocence. We don't need to be injecting that into elementary, and I sure as heck don't need my money or my grandkids' money to be paying for that. $26 million for House of Representatives, quote, Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Are you getting the picture here? Lots of money to create woke culture in the United States. Not just in the United States, $200 million for Pakistan. All right, let's keep digging in. All right, now the good thing about omnibus bills is they're so big because of course they're for everybody, right? That they don't just have a lot of spending, they have a bunch of other laws and regulations and legislation that just gets passed in there as well. Because the bill is so big, 4,100 pages, nobody can read it. Well, and they delivered at 1:30 in the morning a couple days before Christmas as well. So nobody reads it. So they stick all kinds of new laws and legislation in there. So for example, there's a bill that creates, quote, a pandemic czar. So under the Obama administration, he started this. He started putting czars on top or in charge of all these different industries. This is what's called the administrative state. Our government has been taken over by the administrative state. Our government is supposed to be for the people, by the people, elected representatives. We don't have a democracy, we have a republic, which is a representative government. So we're supposed to elect people to go represent us, and then we hold those people accountable. We vote them out if we don't want them. But what's happened is the government's been taken over by this administrative state, really started under the Obama administration, and it continues under the Biden administration. And so now they create another czar, now a pandemic czar. Now, when your job is to, protect against pandemics, then everything starts to look like a pandemic. You know the saying, when all you have is a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail, right? We also have a new law that removes the vice president's ability to void an election. So now they want to change the entire election process, the electoral process that's set in law under the Constitution, but let's just change that while we're at it. Nobody gets to vote on it. Don't worry about it. You don't even look at it. There's all types of tax law changes that have gone through, tax law changes to businesses, exemptions, all that, personal taxes, all kinds of stuff in there. There's increases in all types of welfare, UBI, food stamps, WIC, energy assistance, all types of welfare, more spending there as well. But here's the thing. To read the entire bill, it's over 4,100 pages, it would be 4+ pages per minute for 16 hours straight without taking a break. Now, who could read 4 of these pages? These pages are dense. To take the time, I showed you some that I read, to even read what they say, it takes some time. You got to kind of read through it. You got to think about it. There's no way you can read 4 pages per minute. You don't have 16 hours straight with no break. And so, of course, nobody is reading these bills. All right, now, wouldn't you think that you work, you've probably gone to school 15 years, between elementary, middle, high school, college, 15, 20 years. You spent a lot of time thinking about getting that job. Now you spend a lot of time at that job, working for your money, and then of course the government takes a big chunk of that. Don't you think they should approach that pretty seriously, what they do with your money? I would want them to take it seriously. But instead, the Pentagon just loses track of trillions. We just don't know. As a matter of fact, maybe we'll pass an audit in 5 years from now. So we just lose it. We've sent now, well, we don't even actually know, but the last 2 bills that have been approved have been over $100 billion plus that went to Ukraine for a war, just in the last 10 months. $100 billion, really more, and that's just from the US, more from other countries. Russia's entire budget's only $65 billion. Where do you think all that money is going? All right. Now, on top of this, this omnibus spending bill, it adds $1 trillion to the deficit. So deficit means you're spending more than you earn, right? So you're spending on your credit cards. So if I spend what I earn, then I'm flat. If I spend more, I'm in a deficit. So now we're adding $1 trillion to the deficit. But remember, deficit is made up of income, right, minus expenses. All right, so they're adding $1 trillion to the expense column. What if the income portion goes down? Then we could be at $2 trillion or $3 trillion deficit real quick. And let's take a look at that because, wouldn't you know, tax receipts are plunging. As I started talking about in the beginning of the video, we have witnessed 2022 being the worst year for financial markets. The stock market, the bond market have completely crashed. I made a video the other day talking about the real estate market. In some areas, it's already worse than 2008. And so asset prices, cryptocurrency prices, stock prices, home prices, everything is down. Now, why is that important to tax receipts, you ask? Well, let's take a look at this. So here we see 2022 has been the worst year for markets so far in at least 50 years. But here's why this is bad for tax receipts. A lot of people maybe don't know this because AOC and her friends want to kind of blind you to this because the rich don't pay their fair share of taxes, right? The top 10% of earners in the United States pay 70% of the tax. The top 10%, let me say that again, top 10% pay 70% of all income tax receipts. Now, where do the top 10%, top 5% pay 60%? Where do the top 5% of earners get their income? Well, let me tell you, the majority of it comes from capital gains. So most of them are CEOs, business owners, things like that. They get paid in dividends, they get paid in stocks, things like that. They're real estate developers, are selling real estate. So most of them are getting that money through capital gains, which means asset prices. Now, what happens when asset prices fall? When Facebook stock is down 75%. Does Mark Zuckerberg have capital gains taxes to pay? No. What about real estate developers? Do they have capital gains tax to pay? No. So these top 10% earners, these top 5% earners, almost all of their tax receipts come from cap gains, but all asset prices are down. So there's no cap gains taxes to pay. So what happens to this 60 or 70% of tax receipts? If you guessed going down, you would be correct. So we can see that the markets are the worst they've been in 50 years. Tax receipts are going to go down. So not only have we added $1 trillion to the expense column, we're expecting our income to go down, which is a collision course incoming, which is why I put a picture of a head-on collision right here. This is coming. This will be here next year. This spending bill will be here. This deficit will be here. Your grandkids will be paying for this. The government's running out of money. I've made some videos talking about how the Fed now is not paying the Treasury. They don't have the money to pay the Treasury anymore. The largest asset on the government's books is student loans, which is trying to forgive that as well. So where does the income from that column come from? Well, it comes from deficit spending. Well, where do they get the deficit? Who gives them the credit card? The Federal Reserve does, right? If you guessed that, you're right. So lots of more money printing. I can hear those money printers getting filled up with ink and warming up from here. Can you hear that? Look for that. This is going to be the pivot that we've all been waiting for, and I expect it to be here on a collision course next year. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it in the comment. Do you think I got it right? Or are they miraculously going to come up with $1.7 trillion to spend? Or maybe we could shut this down if each and every single one of you watching this video were to write to one of your lawmakers, send them an email, or make a phone call, if you care. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't, it's okay. You can give me a thumbs down. I still wish you a Merry Christmas anyway. At least leave me a comment, tell me why. Hit that subscribe button while you're at it. And that's what I got. To your success. I'm out.